When people go missing, the majority of the time they turn up or are found well. However, there are cases of missing people who seem to have vanished without a trace. Despite the best efforts of search teams and loved ones, their disappearances remain unsolved and unexplained. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at mysterious disappearances. The case of Immaculate Basil. To most of her closest acquaintances, there was no doubt that Immaculate, otherwise known as Mackie, had lived a hard life. Straight from the get-go, she revolved in and out of the foster system with her siblings. Once she finally escaped, she eventually settled on the Cuz Shea Reserve near Grand Rapids, British Columbia, and survived on part-time jobs, like becoming a secretary and a teacher. Mostly, she was known to be a housewife that rarely desired to leave home. With a loving husband and a 7-month-old child by her side, her life was pretty much set, or at least people thought it was, until she fatefully disappeared. That is when her family started noticing the cracks beginning to form. They were first surprised when Mackie divorced from her husband. Then, on the night of her disappearance, they yet again felt it was out of character for her to be partying and drinking by herself. However, several witnesses would confirm that she was doing so. Once the party ended, Mackie got into a car with her 2 friends, Victor and Keith. However, before they could arrive at their destination, their vehicle got into an accident. Though it was known that Victor decided to look for help by walking along the streets in soaking wet clothing, no record of Keith's actions was made. The very next morning, Mackie's siblings instantly felt something was off when she did not answer their daily phone calls. That worry only intensified the next day, which prompted them to look for her on their own. After 4 straight days without any results, the police were finally notified about her disappearance. Once the search went underway, the stories and theories became fuzzy. Victor's claims were especially suspicious. From his own mouth, he said that he went to look for help in wet clothes. However, witnesses said that they saw him an hour's distance away from the car crash site around the time it supposedly happened. What is even stranger is that there was no record filed of this car crash ever happening. The only pieces of evidence that it supposedly occurred were scrap pieces and a broken tree. But what exactly happened to Mackie following the crash? Victor and Keith both agreed that she decided to go back home and separate from them on her own, which, if they were responsible for any crime, would give them plenty of time to commit it. In fact, it could be argued that no one seems like a better suspect than the 2 men, especially Victor, who was an outsider from the reservation and had a history of assault and crimes. However, another theory is that perhaps Mackie did actually leave the site of the crash and fall victim to a wild animal, because she might not have been used to the feeling of being drunk, and that might have caused her to become prey. Yet, there has been a complete lack of blood or a body to support this theory. Even though the reserve is more remotely located, the lack of issues with any wild animals historically leaves more to be desired from this theory. The final theory is that if Mackie had indeed left the scene of the car crash, that she could have been kidnapped along her way home. Authorities believe this is the least likely theory out of all of them. In the present day, there is still no result about the whereabouts of Immaculate Basil. Any supposed sightings of her were determined to be fake or unlikely, and despite the notion that foul play could have been involved, no one has come forward with any evidence. Perhaps only time will tell if this mysterious case will ever be resolved. Missing Ryan Stuka. If you were ever to venture up the roads of Sun Peaks in Canada, you would have witnessed a pretty unsettling scene. On either side of you, billboards would have constantly reminded you of the mysterious disappearance of a young lift operator from the ski resort back in 2018. On that fateful night, Ryan Stuka was a 20-year-old healthy man from Alberta when he suddenly vanished from thin air following a party. He left at around 2 a.m. and had not been seen since. That was the catalyst to what would be a months-long search effort and police investigation into his haunting disappearance. Hundreds of people from the British Columbia and Alberta communities quickly volunteered to aid local search and rescue teams in their mission to find him. To this day, the search reveals no clues. However, it still remains open and ongoing, very much at the top of everyone's mind in the communities. A search dog was even brought onto the scene. The owner, a search and rescue team member named Mike Ritzy, hopes that bringing his search dog out into the surrounding areas might lead to some new insights. If the mountains and ribboned-off areas have already been extensively explored, he was determined to expand the scope of the search. The very fact that the case possesses so few answers is one that is quite unsettling. With no clue as to where he might be or what happened to him, everyone is living life just a little more cautiously. Ultimately, the townspeople want closure for Ryan and his family. They are hoping that one day someone will come forward and say something. Until then, the next time you decide to visit the Sun Peak ski resort, you might just want to be a little more careful. The disappearance of Amylynn Bradley. When the Bradley family from America boarded the Rhapsody of the Sea for a week-long cruise, little did they know this would be their last holiday together as a whole family. Ron and Ivor Bradley, their son Brad, 21, and daughter Amy, 23, embarked on the cruise ship in Aruba on the 21st of March 1998. 3 days later, Amy would disappear from their lives forever. After a night of partying on March the 23rd, Amy Bradley finished the evening drinking with the ship's band, Blue Orchid, in the dance club. One of the band members, Alistair Douglas, aka Yellow, would subsequently say that Amy left to return to her room at about 1 a.m. Around 5:30 a.m., Bradley's father, his room adjacent to Amy's, wakes briefly before falling back to sleep, but remembers seeing Amy on her cabin balcony sleeping at that time. When Ron got up at 6 a.m., he noticed Amy was no longer there. When he went to check up on her, he discovered that she wasn't in her room at all. During that time, the ship would soon be docking at Curacao, and the Bradley family notified the ship security that their daughter was missing. A quick search of the ship found nothing, and fearful that Amy had been kidnapped, the Bradleys pleaded with the crew not to let any passengers off at Curacao. Not wanting to disappoint its passengers, the ship refused, and at Curacao, thousands streamed off the cruise liner, and perhaps so too did any chance of finding Amy. Further searches of the ship and the sea produced no signs of her whereabouts, and on March the 29th, the official search was ended. Investigators saw no evidence she had fallen overboard, or anything that could point to suicide, and yet there were no clear answers of where the 23-year-old could be. Various sightings occurred in the years following her disappearance. In 1999, a naval officer stated that at a brothel in Curacao, a woman, upon hearing another American, came up to him saying, "My name is Amy Bradley, and I need help," before two burly men noticed this and escorted her out of the room, and he could make anything more of it. Another sighting occurred in 2005, when a witness named Julie Mora apparently saw Amy in a department store restroom. She claimed the woman entered the bathroom with 3 large men, who proceeded to threaten her if she did not follow through on a deal. Mora alleged that after the men had left, she approached the distraught woman, who then said that her name was Amy and that she was from Virginia, before the men re-entered to take her away. By the time Mora was able to call the authorities, the group was gone. Towards the end of 2005, Amy's parents also revealed they had received photos of a scantily clad woman with a strong resemblance to their missing daughter. Whilst showing perhaps that Amy was still alive, possibly having been abducted and sold into sexual slavery, it still remains that her location is unknown. The Bradleys have never given up their search, however, and still today offer a $250,000 reward for information leading to Amy's whereabouts. The disappearance of Rebecca Corriam. When Rebecca Corriam got the job of looking after children on board the Disney cruise ship Wonder, she thought she had got her dream role. However, dreams soon turned into nightmares when her parents Mike and Anne received a call from Disney saying their daughter had gone missing. Rebecca was a 24-year-old graduate from England who had just completed a sports science degree and loved to work with kids. She had been working on the Disney ship in youth activities for 9 months, enjoying every day as much as the last, when on March 21st, 2011, Rebecca failed to turn up to her morning shift. Out of character for her, Rebecca didn't respond to calls over the ship's tannoy either, and although a search was instigated soon after, she could not be located anywhere on board the ship, which at the time was sailing down the Pacific coast of Mexico. The Coast Guard was alerted so that a sea search could be carried out, but this still found nothing. Disney officials notified Mike and Ann Corry of their daughter's disappearance, who flew out to join the search. Mike and Ann were finally told by Disney representatives that it was believed Rebecca had been swept overboard from the crew pool by a rogue wave. However, against the high steel walls around that area and the possibility of a rogue wave inconsistent with the weather conditions at that time of year, Rebecca's parents were skeptical of this theory. Furthermore, their daughter was a strong swimmer and competing triathlete. At the time of her disappearance, the ship was docked close to the shoreline, so it was inconceivable that Rebecca would not have been able to make it to land. This would not be the only inconsistency created about Rebecca's disappearance. Disney provided her parents with one side of a slipper found near the crew pool, saying it was hers and backing up the theory that she had been swept overboard. However, both friends and family stated that the slipper was not of the style or even size that Rebecca would wear and questioned exactly whose slipper this actually was. In addition, if she had fallen overboard, it would definitely have been captured on at least one of the many CCTV cameras dotted around that area. Furthermore, with the crew pool in close proximity to the ship's bridge, a fall from that place would have surely been seen by someone. Later, more information would emerge about Rebecca's last known hours. She was last seen on CCTV at 5:45 a.m. in the crew lounge, on the phone looking visibly distressed. As she is talking, another crew member walks by, briefly asking if she is okay, to which Rebecca responds, "Yeah, fine," visible by lip reading. After Rebecca hangs up, she wanders out of frame and is never seen again. With Disney's clean-cut image at risk, it is obvious that it would be in their best interest to conclude the case as quickly as possible. However, wayward theories, inconsistent facts, and an employee clearly in distress the day they go missing only make this unresolved case of disappearance more suspicious. The disappearance of George Smith. George Allen Smith was on board the Royal Caribbean international cruise ship Brilliance of the Seas with his wife Jennifer, both celebrating their honeymoon, having married in Connecticut just 10 days previously. They were a young couple in their 20s and adamant their marriage would get off to a luxurious start, and one where they could continue to party and celebrate their marriage vows. The newlyweds boarded at Barcelona on Wednesday the 29th of June 2005, and the cruise was due to stop in Greece, France, Turkey and Italy, amongst other stunning locations along the way. By all accounts, George and Jennifer appeared to be having a wonderful time in those first few days of their honeymoon. After dinner on the evening of July the 4th, the couple continued their night with drinks at the ship's disco. George noticed his wife flirting with a man on the dance floor and attempted to intervene. The couple were last seen together when a fiery argument broke out between them, culminating in Jennifer kicking her new husband in the groin and storming out of the disco. The next day, a 16-year-old girl stepped onto her balcony looking to take photos of the spectacular sunrise. Instead, she was greeted with something far more sinister on the overhang of the lifeboats: a huge blood stain on the lifeboat canopy. Security quickly determined that the only people unaccounted for were the Smiths, and moved to find out where they were. Jennifer was found having a massage. She had no memory of what had happened after the casino and awoke in their cabin with no sign of George. She assumed he had gone to sleep in another room, something he had done before. Further searches of the ship revealed no clues as to George's whereabouts. However, bloodstains were found in his cabin as well as on the side of the ship. Foul play was suspected, and the FBI were brought on board to start their own investigations. The matter was referred to the Mafia Division of the FBI with an initial theory that this was a robbery gone bad, with the unfortunate newlywed subsequently thrown from his room over the side of the ship and into the watery depths below. Indeed, Smith's family, citing accounts of other men with him in his cabin and the sounds of arguing before a thud was heard between 4 and 5 a.m., when detectives believed Jennifer had returned to their room, said they believe he was murdered. The FBI investigated for 10 years before telling the family they couldn't prove his death was a homicide and not an accident, a decision that outraged and disgusted Smith's relatives. His body was never found. But what do you make of these mysteries and disappearances? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.